right now, I'm gonna show you how to combine pressing flowers with nature journaling. First, you're gonna wanna choose a plant, and finding a plant that is not only interesting to you, but that also meets the requirements and the technicalities of drying flowers and pressing them in your journal is going to be important. So you don't want things that are too woody or too three-dimensional. Something such as this oak branch is probably going to be more problematic, whereas something such as this sage right here is three-dimensional, but it's herbaceous enough, it's soft enough, like I can pinch it with my fingers, and if I know I can pinch it with my fingers like that and it comes off that easily, that's probably something that's going to get squished enough and be two-dimensional enough to work when you glue it into your nature journal. All right, let's look at some other plant options. These would be cool. They could be smashed. I can pick them with my thumbnail almost, and it comes off. However, it's so wet. This is probably going to create a mess in your nature journal. It will end up being too wet when you try to press it. This borage, on the other hand, I'm definitely going to look at something like this, because on a plant like this, you might even be able to, even though it's really wet and herbaceous down here, that could be slow drying. Up here looks very interesting, and these flowers separate completely from the plant, so that is an option unless you drop them. There are other things that maybe they're not flowering yet, but could be interesting just because of their leaf pattern. This is really cool, and because of the, there's a repeating pattern to these, they're kind of consistent in their repetition. This could be cool as a repeating element on a border or something like that in your nature journal. This is like the first time I've kneeled down in about a month or so because of the knee injury that I'm still recovering from that time when I fell while filming an episode in the Costa Rican cloud forest. So it feels good to be doing that. I still have a lot of pain and I'm not back to normal yet, but at least I'm out here nature journaling and pressing flowers, which is something that I'm super excited about. And I'm really looking forward to pressing this one right here. This is a salvia. It's in the salvia genus, which is in the mint family, opposite stems, square leaves. Those opposite stems make a really cool flower structure. These inflorescences are pretty well characteristic of the mint family in general, and are going to look really cool when pressed. I think pressing flowers is one of those places where a lot could be used in nature journaling, and it's like a new sort of frontier for nature journaling. I think there's even the potential to make a journal, a nature journal, into an herbarium, or how to combine an herbarium, what's going on with an herbarium, into a nature journal. Maybe the herbariums are what should be turned into a nature journal. So I'm gonna briefly show you the press that I'm using. I'm not gonna do a whole bunch about it, but I'll talk about it more in a later video. But the cool thing is you kind of keep building on it, and I'm using these clamps right here that allow me to expand it quite a bit more than the screws that this originally came with. So that is basically the size that I have to be thinking about of what my plant matter can be, and then also thinking about, so if it can fit in here, maybe I would cut it here, it could fit in here. What is the size of, ow, I hurt my knee. What is the size of nature journal that you're gonna need to be fitting it in? So as you probably know, I use these right here. They're 9 by 13. So what is the size of plant that I could fit into this? So I could hold that right up. And ideally, you would probably have something similar to your book, or smaller, of course. You wouldn't want something bigger. So this pretty much maxes out the size of my book. And I kind of like that option. I can always cut the flowers and adapt them later, which we'll talk about in a later part of this episode. So next thing that I have to do is harvest my flower. I really like these scissors. They're Japanese bonsai scissors. They work pretty well. And don't put your scissors in your pocket, okay? I do not want to see you walking around with these sticking in your pocket. I do some dangerous things, but walking around with scissors in my pocket is not one of them, especially scissors like this that are so pointy on the tip, and that's really good for what we're doing. So one thing you can do is use a champagne cork. This gives you more excuses to drink champagne. For kids that are watching, just tell your parents to get you some Martinelli sparkling cider, and you can use the cork from that. Hopefully they still come with natural cork. So that's one thing to do, but even better, even with this on the cork, I wouldn't stick it in my pocket, but I would carry this in my nature journal kit, and I have done so. Another option, especially if you're doing this in your garden or you're already a gardener and have gardening tools, is one of these types of sheaths or holsters that would work for these as well. You could put both of these pairs. For me personally, I like to use the most delicate scissors or delicate cutting tools that I can find. Now that you've harvested your material, I suggest that you set up a nice comfy chair outside or a table or picnic table or something like that outside where you can sit down and do this in the outdoors near to the plant that you are going to be pressing. That way you could be nature journaling the environmental context and the plants and animals that are in relationship with this plant, and you could be putting down metadata and all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm gonna set up my Joey camp chair. It's that Joey chair by Travel Chair. Anyways, it's that super comfortable chair that I've taken all over the place. I'm gonna set that up, and now that I have my plant material, I'm gonna just sit down and do the pressing here. When you're nature journaling, it's really important to think about taking care of your physical needs, not just the art side of things. That's why it's really important to always wear a hat. Protecting your eyes and your head from the sun and your face from the sun is going to be really important and help you nature journal longer. While I am technically a professional nature journaler, I am definitely not professional at pressing flowers and pressing plants. So a lot of what I tell you right now might be wrong or totally the opposite way of how you should do it. But the good thing is you can often learn better from someone that is not an expert at something, and we will see how this can be combined with nature journaling techniques. Alright, so I use these clamps, which I thought would be super convenient for taking on and off. They are definitely much faster than the wing nut screws that came with this, and you don't have to thread them through these holes, which was really annoying, which was also limiting the size of the paper that could be fit in here. And I don't know why the corners were rounded. It made it so that they had to use rounded cardboard, and you couldn't even fit plants up past that line, so that was really silly. And I replaced it with some different types of paper that I cut and cardboard that I cut. This is just from like a box that had canned coconut milk or something in it, and these are the ones that originally came with the kit, and it just seemed like a lot of extra effort to have to cut the corners off to match those holes for the wing nut, so I avoided that altogether. And then I have cut some different types of Arches paper made by the company Arches. I think this one is actually supposed to be for oil painting, and I've had it lying around not using it. So this is a great way to use paper that you might have, watercolor paper that you've never used and you just have sitting around. That's part of the idea behind this for me. Let me show you a couple of the other papers I'm trying. I have a lot of that Arches oil paper. I think this is also the Arches oil paper, but this one, notice I cut the paper with scissors. I don't think that looks as cool as these ones where I tore the edges. Those torn edges, those deckled edges, that's not the presented side. Hopefully that will be the presented side. I think looks very cool, looks kind of antique. I'm the worst person in the world at tearing paper, by the way. It's definitely a skill. Here's a pro tip. I'm going to show you very briefly how to tear paper in a straight line. Hold down a ruler, this is a good metal one, and pull the paper up towards you.
the opposite side of the paper is going to be the one that you want to keep. That's where the edge is going to be clean. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind when you are doing this. One of them is that the bigger the area that you're pulling up on, the better. As you can see, when I try to pull a very narrow margin of paper, it doesn't work as well, and it actually rips unevenly. Notice how uneven it is there at the end, and this one comes out even worse. So you need to have fairly large pieces of paper for doing this, and remember to line up the sides that have the desirable look.
So it's something that I got a while ago for a drawing class that I took at a community college, and it's this Strathmore charcoal paper. I thought there would be more info than that, and it's gray. It has kind of a cool texture on it. Maybe you can see that there. Pretty cool texture. I think that could look cool for plants, and I want to see what plants look like pressed on toned paper. And then check this out, I'm getting really crazy practicing this art journaling stuff, talking to Alex Boone, talking to some of these other people, looking at people's videos on YouTube about junk journaling and art journaling, getting me a little wacky ideas. But I had this isometric graph paper sitting around, which is super fun, by the way. Really fun for lettering, really fun for a lot of different things, really good for your brain. And I thought, wouldn't this potentially look interesting to have plants on that? It would look sort of scientific in a way. Maybe regular graph paper would be cool too, especially if it had centimeter measurements on it. So I think that's all the types of paper I have here to experiment with, and I just cut out a whole bunch of them and stuck them in here. Underneath I have the flowers that I'm currently working on, so let me show you a couple of those. So here you can see already the three-dimensional part, and this is the part I haven't figured out yet, is you never know which area the plant is going to get stuck to. Like, is it going to get stuck on this side or is it going to get stuck on that side? And sometimes it doesn't stick at all. This is, I forget what it is, some type of monocot. I'm blanking on the name right now. Comes up from a bulb. Really beautiful in life, and I'm hoping it'll look good once it's dry too. That's a pretty fleshy plant, pretty wet plant, especially the stem down there. Maybe I shouldn't have left that much of the stem, but we'll see how it goes. I've been keeping my kit in a really dry place, and I think I'm hoping that this will dry out fine. So the pieces of cardboard are a key part of the drying, and what you notice is the cardboard has holes going all the way through it. That allows air to go through between the layers of plants and paper and make sure there's more air movement for proper drying, because it is possible for things to mold. So since that's my last flower there, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this this cardboard down, and I'm gonna get ready for my next layer. So I think for this salvia, and I can't believe I'm blanking still on the species name for this one. It's one of the more drought-tolerant ones. It's not, maybe it's Brandiges, Salvia brandigi, I'm not sure. Anyway, so I've got this down. I'm gonna go ahead and go with this Arches oil painting paper. There's a bird like right next to me in this bush. I think it's a towhee. Okay, so I picked a couple different versions. I think it's about to start snowing or something. Holy, that is weird. This is very unusual weather for us. Look at that right there. I thought I saw snow. It's either hail or ice just landed on here. I might have to finish this video later. Yes, folks, it's about to start hailing. I live in California. People think we don't have to deal with any weather in California. But look at this, it's about to start hailing right now, and this is very unusual. So if you're pressing flowers, this is actually a cool thing. Look at those pieces of ice right there. Look at those clouds, oh my gosh. You can finish the work when you go inside. You know, people in California freak out when this kind of stuff happens. This right now, if you had a bunch of almonds or cherries flowering right now, this would definitely take those flowers off. Okay, so it's kind of like slush hailing slightly here. So what I'm gonna do is, instead of doing a flower pressing and nature journaling video as if I lived in California, what I do is I'm just gonna go out into the garden briefly wearing my wintry protective equipment, and maybe I'll take like a tray or something with me and my snippers. And one thing that I definitely want to do is I want to get multiple samples of each thing that I'm interested in, because you don't really know until you're pressing them on the page what they're going to look like. Now, ideally, you don't want to be collecting material that just got rained on, so maybe this is not exactly the best example. You probably want to go out like after the dew has melted away and before it starts raining on anything. So I'm interested in this plant right here. These are in seed. I don't know, for some people that might be bad or not. Seeds could fall out later from your journal, but I think that's kind of interesting. So I'm gonna take a piece of this. I'm not gonna take any of this calendula because I think the seed head or the capitulum or whatever it's called is too three-dimensional and is not gonna work very well when I try to press it. Wow, this hail is so... I should probably just switch gears and start nature journaling the hail. That is really cool. Okay, the other thing I want to get is some of that borage. It is very fleshy, but I think what I'm gonna do just to make this quicker is I'm gonna cut it right here at the base, and that way I can just take all of this and arrange it later. Maybe I'll take another big one like that. That'll be easier to carry since I don't have a tray. And then I also want to get some of this chrysanthemum right here. I think this foliage would be really cool, and I could just separate out the foliage later. So I can cut this whole branch right here and separate out individual leaves and create my own arrangements with those. They'll sort of be, I'm gonna just think of them as sort of like a filler, the way I would in a bouquet. And there's a couple, oh yeah, I want to get some more of this other kind of salvia. There is a salvia up here that is just one of my favorite plants. I mean, maybe not one of my favorite plants, but one of my favorite flowers right now. And they're just one of my favorite salvias. Really, really cool. Look how dramatic these are. I love those so much. That's the Salvia gesneriflora, and they are quite big. I really like the colors. Look at that dark color. It's like a naphthalide maroon on the, I think that's the sepal, no, it's the, is it the calyx? Anyways, it is a beautiful color, really cool plant, but the hummingbirds love it, and they're really depending on this one right now. So I'm gonna leave those flowers alone, but I will get some of this other salvia over here. This is the Salvia purpurea. Look how cool it is. Oh, and look at that. This one does have ants on it, so you will end up probably eventually getting some ants in your nature journal if you are cutting flowers for pressing flowers in your nature journal. So I think I'm gonna get that stem right there. And this one will look nice. I'm gonna try to get some variation. It's good to get some variation when doing this and have options. Like if you only cut one flower, that doesn't give you very many options when it comes to doing sort of more of the collage art. So I'm even gonna get some that have these weird crooked stems and like flowering in multiple places like that. And you could do more or less cleaning while you're out here. Oh, I'm also just gonna get some of the vegetative tips like this right here. And that is just the nice little vegetative tip that I might actually use it in place of some of the dingy looking leaves on one of my flower stalks. So I could fake later on in the future, this might be really useful when these are all dried up in a certain place. I'll get a little bit more foliage of this one and that one. Okay, so I've got a good bundle here. I don't want to overdo it and end up with a huge pile of plants on my kitchen table, because the next step is to go inside and make sure you have a good working space. I'm sort of tired of getting hailed on out. Don't forget when you come inside to take off your sunglasses, wool jacket, and your garden shears so your significant other doesn't make fun of you. Since these just got rained on, which is not ideal, I'm gonna put them in front of the fire and let them dry out a little bit while I make some hot cocoa. Cacao has 0 sugars. Once you have your hot chocolate ready, then you can just take a towel and spread it out on your significant other's desk or at home work area. As long as they can see the screen of their computer, that should be fine. This is one of those times where it is good if you chose plants that smell good instead of plants that smell like skunk or really bad like body odor. And so I'm just gonna spread these out and maybe shake out some of the water here. Ideally, this could probably get done in a garden shed or something like that. See, there's only a few bugs crawling on the pillow that I used, so don't worry about it too much. All right, so now that I'm in my little art journal, junk journaling, flower pressing studio area, I am going to get started by pressing the flowers that have the least amount of sort of rain on them. And I can show you some of my flowers that I've pressed before. Here are some jasmine that I did, and these were really cool because they smelled good. I used these in Mother's Day cards. They still sort of smell good. This sage right here is going to be an overpowering smell. I would say it's pretty good, but some people might not be that into it. A couple other things I have in this area, of course, I have Mod Podge and a brush. And then one thing that I was using just as scrap paper was this garden catalog, and I highly recommend you get this garden catalog. They're based in the Northeast US. I think they're in Maine, but they have amazing garden seed, but they also have really cool illustrations. And I was just using this as scrap paper, and then what I realized is a lot of the illustrations and even the text in here are great for a junk journal or art journal type thing. Here is a page I ripped out that is just their one of their charts, and even the spacing chart is actually really cool. I'm not usually sticking random things into my journals, but this is something that I would consider, and I have been starting to work on a bit of an art journal or junk journal or whatever you want to call it recently, and it's just a small one, and I've been sticking some stuff like this in there, and that's from this catalog. So if you're doing pressed flowers from your garden or pressed plants from your garden, how cool would it be to have them together with pages, these sort of antique looking pages from this seed company. Fedco is the one I'm thinking of, but there's probably a lot of other ones that would be good. So I have that here, and you can press flowers in newspaper or newsprint like this. This catalog is on newsprint. If it were a glossy catalog like the Baker Creek Seed Company, I wouldn't press flowers in there because the glossy paper doesn't allow for moisture to seep out and for your flowers to dry. You could also just use a journal or a book and stick them in there. But what that means in your nature journal, for example, is you wouldn't be able to access those pages. I'm going to experiment with a technique like that in the future where I use my actual nature journal instead of a separate thing for pressing and then taking things out and gluing it into my nature journal, which is what I've been doing. Let me show you an example from here. So here you can see a flower that I pressed in this same press here, and then afterwards I glued it in with Mod Podge into this journal, into this collage there. But there's probably a way you could just do all of that whole process at one time in one journal. So I'm just going to open this up and get my cardboard pieces all sorted out to the side. I am going to go ahead and use this Arches paper, and I saved the Arches paper thing. Look, now I'm really getting into this kind of stuff. I didn't even want to throw away the scrap cover from the paper pad because I like the color and the design and the look of it. So I'll probably stick that into something. But that is the paper that I'm going to be using. It's 300 GSM, 140 pounds, and it's supposed to be for oil painting actually. So it's not their traditional watercolor. I hope it allows enough air to go through. So I'm going to take all of my extra paper and put it aside here so I can reach my cardboard on one area and my paper on another area. I'm going to find where my last flower was. There's my last flower. And I'm not going to be super technical, but one thing that would probably be good to do would be to at least write the location and the date when you collect stuff. I'm going to look at which side of the paper I would prefer to have, the good side. And I'm just going to do, you could do like full-on metadata, but I'm leaning more on the artistic side. And then the sample of the actual plant is the scientific information, basically. But having a date and location is good. I'm just going to make a brief note. And today is 2/22/22, which is cool. All right, so I'm going to see what fits on here. One thing that I'm going to start pointing out right away is when you have three-dimensional stuff, so if you look at this from the top, you can see that the branching structure that I talked about is opposite, but it also alternates in its axis. So you might want to eliminate all of the ones that are in this axis because those are going to have to get squished to the side and they sort of muddle the pattern, the alternating pattern. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut these ones off. Not all of them have this, but I'll go ahead and do it now. You might be able to use those pieces somewhere else though. How cute would those be, you know, like in the front of your nature journal? And you just Mod Podged those down. Just these teeny little things like this could be really useful. So I might just dry those, dehydrate those, press those flowers right next to these other ones. That looks a little weird now, that gap. So I might, I'm gonna deal with that one later actually and focus on this one. These are going to be, these whorls right here on the inflorescence are going to be a little bit three-dimensional, so I'm not totally sure how those are going to look in the finished product, but I'm not too worried about it. You can think about composition here and get really into it if you want to, how you spread the leaves out, how it's going to fit on the page. I think I'm just going to keep it simple so I don't get paralysis by analysis since I have a lot of plant material to work with, and I'm just going to do something like that. And move on. I kind of want to go for like a bulk effect of getting a lot of things, and I'm just going to try to push it down a little bit. It's quite three-dimensional, so there's not that much I can do, and I'm going to put another piece of cardboard on it and another piece of paper. Some of you are probably so much more expert at this than I am. I am a complete beginner, I would say, so you're probably laughing at all of the mistakes that I'm making. But sometimes it's better to learn from someone who's making a lot of mistakes. Okay, so I'm separating that because that just looked too weird with the three-dimensional ones, and maybe here I will do these. You can arrange things and kind of make things almost bouquet-like and put multiple flowers on the page, or you could fill this in sort of in a way that doesn't actually match the way it looks in nature if you wanted to. I think I'm going to do basically similar to the last one that I did. These could be used for cards or something later on. Maybe I'll try pressing these two leaves by themselves. I think they might move though, but I'll try that leaf there. And one thing that I haven't figured out yet, and maybe some of you understand, is I never know if it's going to stick on this side or if it's going to stick on this side. And some pieces might stick on opposite ones. So, or sometimes it won't stick to the paper at all, depending on the plant. This is kind of a sticky, slightly sticky plant. And then what I've been doing is having to peel it off afterwards and Mod Podge or glue it onto something else. All right, so I'm going to press those ones down with another piece of cardboard, and then I think I'm gonna do one more of this species. How fast I'm gonna run? It took me forever to tear all that paper by hand, and I'm about to go through it really fast. This is the side I want. See which of these do I want, or do I want to go with something else already? No, I think I like this salvia enough to keep going with it. Maybe I'll include more plant matter, more vegetative parts on that one. Ooh, this could be cool. Ooh, yeah. I like that. I like that composition right there. Ooh, yes. This is such a fun way, I think, to practice composition, actually. And it's sort of more like, it's more like collage, definitely, than drawing. But this will affect your drawing. Like if you do botanical drawing, botanical illustration, practicing this kind of arranging is going to help your composition. I guarantee it. Okay, so now I'm going to take, you know what I could be doing? I could be alternating with these papers. But I don't want them to stick on those and be permanently there. Okay, so here goes this last one of those. Okay, how much more cardboard do I have? I guess I should have made more cardboard too. Okay, and now I'm going to go on to my next plant. This isn't an ideal piece of cardboard because it has this little bump here, but oh well. Let's see, I should use something dry for that. I'm going to go ahead and experiment with this paper. Even though I should probably use this for something on the dry side since this paper is thinner. So you have choices about what material you're taking out. So far these salvias were so perfect I didn't really need to remove any material. But on this I'm going to remove these larger leaves. This is wilting already, so it's good to get it now. If you were trying to be really, purely scientific in your nature journaling of these pressed flowers, you would probably want to like take notes down when you remove things like that, because that's creating sort of a artifact that is not true to what was happening in nature. Especially because you're eliminating things like this. This would be interesting to Nature Journal, for example. So maybe I should include that leaf. All right, so I'm sort of running out of time as usual with art stuff. There, you can get into a flow state and you forget that you're supposed to be cooking dinner for everyone in the household. Everyone's depending on you. So unfortunately, with this kind of thing, I don't want to leave all the plant material out that I already harvested. This has to happen within a certain amount of time. So I'm just going to prioritize quickly, and luckily this is not like rare plant material. These are things that are very abundant in my garden, so I don't have to worry about that aspect of things. So I'm just going to keep going here a little bit more quickly and finish up with this Salvia purpurea, the one that's full of ants, unfortunately. And then I'm going to not do a full layer of cardboard right there since I'm running out of cardboard. Put another one down like this, and then I'm going to do a really flowery one. So I'm going to make one where it's mostly just flowers. Oh, and I broke that flower. So I'm going to cut this, and I'm working quickly because I'm supposed to be going out to dinner. So you can definitely get paralysis analysis. Oh, this is the one that had that cool curve to it. I should probably keep this one. You can definitely get paralysis analysis and get all perfectionist about it. So pay attention to that and know that you can influence the direction that you go in there. And sometimes it might be better to slow down and be very meticulous. And sometimes it might be better for your learning to kind of be a little bit less OCD and just kind of go a little bit more quickly and get more done. Sometimes you can learn more when you try more things, even if some of those things don't come out great. So I'm just going to squeeze in a couple more of these plants. Mainly I want to get those leaves by themselves. I think will be really cool. So I'm going to go to that one next, and I think I am going to use one of my cardboards here. These are wilting very quickly, but I want to use these in sort of a composite way like I was trying to explain in the garden. So I'm going to pick as many of these, and I know that I can trim them later, so I'm not that worried if the edge comes out rough where I pick them, but I just want a lot of sort of repetition, and I'm going to use this the same way that I would in like a bouquet if I were looking for some type of filler, some type of foliage that has a repetitive pattern. I mean, just think of how much time you'd save instead of using drawing or painting to create a repeating pattern, maybe like on the inside of your journal cover. You could use leaves like this that each one of these, the outline of it would take me probably like 30 minutes to draw, and it wouldn't be anywhere near as perfect as these ones, of course. So I'll probably be peeling those off of that paper and using them in other places where I would probably put like Mod Podge on top of them to keep them in place. They're probably going to be very delicate because I can tell they're made of a lot of water. Look at how much they've already wilted, and it's not even a hot day or anything. But I'm really excited about trying to use these for patterns. This is an edible chrysanthemum. And it comes back in my garden. I haven't planted this in like 7 years. It just comes back by itself. So I definitely want to reduce the amount of material here because this is very wet and it's pretty messy and kind of ugly for a lot of it. That looks doable. So if this were for an herbarium collection, I would definitely want representation of this leaf. I think even if it is diseased, that's something that would be interesting to look at, is to see if the people that are doing those collections have any biases when they're collecting material to collect like bigger pieces, or what the sort of best practices are for doing that so that you're not creating that bias in science. And I think that's a huge thing with photojournalism, is the photos that people take or do not take create this illusion of what the reality is for everyone else who depends on those photos for their information. So like for a lot of people, all they know about you know, maybe the Maasai people in Kenya and Tanzania, all they know about them is from photos they've seen in National Geographic. But if the National Geographic photographers never take photos of the Maasai that's holding a cell phone or not wearing traditional garments, then the people who are using National Geographic photos for their knowledge about the Maasai might think that they all look a certain way because of that bias. So I wonder if that happens to you know, herbarium plant collections. So I'm putting my last piece of cardboard on here, and good thing I'm not using the original system with these little screws and wing nuts. That would be impossible right now to line those up. I also wouldn't be able to do this big of a size, and I wouldn't be able to do like this many stacks. And I also wouldn't be able to use as wide of paper. So I'm going to be using these clamps right here. These come in bigger sizes, but these are small and I think would be easy to just keep together with the kit. This limits the amount that I can open it to, so I'm getting close to what I can accommodate. And this metal thing here is the quick release one, and then you squeeze this and it tightens it little by little. Okay, let's see if I can fit. It's like when you make, you know, your own sandwich or hamburger at home, and then you're not sure if you're going to be able to fit it into your mouth. Okay, let's see how easy this is. I've never really worked with these very much. I'm just trying them now. Okay, so I have to use this part to squeeze. Luckily, it's one-handable. I think I could slide down faster that way too. Okay, I don't know if I want to tighten that one all the way until I get the other one on, so let me get this other one on over here. This big hamburger is going to fit in my mouth. All right, now I'm going to tie them both at the same time. Oh my gosh, it's not even lined up. That's probably really bad, but look at how not lined up that is. There's probably some reason why that's bad, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to tighten down on my cool little clamp things and call it a day. This is going to go next to my stove, or in my car, or on top of my refrigerator. Those are the places that I'm going to use for speeding up the drying process. One good place to keep your flower press to accelerate the drying of your flowers and plants is on the hood of your car. Guess how hot it is up here right now, and the airflow is also really good. The drying's really good. This is the main downside I have with using these clamps on my flower press though, is I'm sort of paranoid about having them this close to my glass, even though I already have a broken windshield. So that is. Other than that, just keeping your flower press in your car is probably a great idea, and it gives you something. If you see something cool on the side of the road or in the shopping center, you could pick the plant and put it into your flower press, so you're always ready to go, and it's just constantly drying here in your car. What you don't want is direct sun on the plant matter inside, but I think it should be fine otherwise. So here is what those delicate looking ones look like once they have been Mod Podged in. This is the matte Mod Podge, and even with this light there's barely any reflection. A lot of the times you can't even tell how these are attached onto there. I really like how this came out, and these are just weeds. I put some notes in afterwards. It will be good for you to practice a little bit what pins work with the Mod Podge on top of it and which ones don't, or figure out just a system for not putting Mod Podge over all of the paper if you plan on doing any notes or any drawings. I at least got the dates, some information with these numbers for connecting it to my original collection notes. So right here I took notes down about the locations and the type of plant I thought they were. So those correspond here. You can see on this side, these are more three-dimensional ones. This is that water celery plant. Came out pretty good though, and this is actually some mistletoe, so sort of the most chunky thing I've put in so far. It's not a completely beautiful page in terms of, you know, like it's pretty messy. It wasn't the best pressing, but I think all in all, it came out good. One other example, these are ones that I harvested the other day and Mod Podged onto some watercolor type paper. This is actually an Arches paper that's meant for oil painting, and then Mod Podged it and cut it out carefully. So that is what I'm going to do on this page here. This is one of the ones that I pressed earlier in the video. It's that Salvia. I think it's Brandages maybe. Not the cleanest Mod Podge job, but I'm going to take the scissors and cut around there and try to achieve this effect. I'm also going to take out some more of the plants that I pressed the other day. The front few pages and the inside cover and back cover and last few pages are a really great place to use pressed plants in your nature journal. So I'm actually going to start there. It'll give me a few options. It's a good way if you have a brand new journal to break in that blank page and just get started in a new journal, or at the end when your journal is pretty much full and you have some blank pages, gluing in some pressed flowers is going to be a perfect way to use that space. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my press and take out some of the plants that I pressed earlier in the video, and that's been about a week now, and I'm going to Mod Podge them in here. I'm almost out of Mod Podge. This stuff is really cheap, but it goes fast. I also have this other glue, which I was really excited about at first and now have some complaints about, but this only works for putting the plant down. It doesn't work for giving it a covering. I actually have these jasmine flowers sitting right here, so why don't I Mod Podge those in, because they've been just sitting here on my crafting table for so long. These actually had a really nice smell when I first pressed them in a card, and that would have been cool to use them in that original application. So
it was at this point where Marley got distracted by the possibilities of art and decided he was going to do a whole gouache background on the page and some other weird junk journaling and art journaling techniques instead of staying focused on applying pressed flowers into his nature journal.
So I'm going to rip a little bit of this and put it down as a background. So this is sort of more of a multimedia or junk journal, art journal type technique, but it goes well with pressing flowers. I think pushing down saves the side you're working on. Yeah, so the side you're working on should be the side you're pushing away from. And you can see how on this side, it's ripping a lot away, and I wouldn't want that, I don't think. Woo! Let's Mod Podge this. Okay, so I got this brush ready. I should probably have clean water here somewhere. Sort of clean. And I haven't tried this before for Mod Podge, but they're supposed to work, so. I'm gonna put these jasmine flowers here. I'm not too worried about composition right now. I just wanna get them on here. So I'm gonna start with the small, whoa, I just dripped Mod Podge on the page. Oh no, it ripped some of the petals off. So it can happen when you're working with delicate plant matter. Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is why a lot of people who do this kind of stuff have tweezers. That would be really useful right now if I had some of those. And to think about which direction you're painting in, because like that just pulled that whole flower off right there. There's probably a way I could have done it so that didn't happen. Like painting underneath first. Gluing it with the other glue first is what I usually do. All right, so how about, let's just pretend I didn't do that. So I'm gonna let this get glued down pretty good first, and then I will try the Mod Podge on top. If you get any Mod Podge on your hands, don't worry, because it's like really good for your hair. While that's drying, I'm going to look through some of the flowers I pressed the other day and see what I can do with them. Maybe I can use some of them right here. I also put some new stuff in here during the show, the recent live show, How to Nature Journal Your Food. So those could be kind of messy because one of the things that I put in here was a slice of dragon fruit cactus, actually. Maybe it's not up here near the top. Ooh, it feels warm in here from being in the car. So this thing has been in there for a long time. This plant has got to be pretty much dry by now.
but it's a sort of fleshy plant. Oh, here we go. Here are the dragon fruit slices. This might have been a real crazy idea. Definitely want to keep this somewhere with good airflow and low humidity so this doesn't mold. This is probably pushing the limits of it's putting water all the way through the cardboard. It's so juicy. It changed color already. I should probably just do this in the dehydrator, food dehydrator that I have. It looks like it's sticking to the wax paper as much as it's sticking to the regular paper. So that was probably a failed idea. Too messy. Too much sugar too. It was a really sugary fruit. So I'm just gonna take that out. I don't think that was a crazy experiment, but I'll just take that out. Maybe snack on that later. This one is going to work, so I'm gonna leave this one alone, but I think that's the salad greens that I'm pressing. And here we go. Here are some of the salvias from the other day. There's just one that's kind of cute. That's a good example of one to pull out and put somewhere else. This one could be similar to this one where I leave it mounted on this paper, especially because this is pretty nice paper. I can feel the moisture from that dragon fruit came all the way through to here. So that's one downside of putting something very moist in your press, is it can affect a lot of other stuff in your press. This one might be good just to leave on this page like that, so I'm gonna put it aside. It has a nice smell to it, but then this one I think I'm going to peel off of here carefully. This is where the tweezers would come in. Maybe this one could even go down here somewhere. It'll look kind of cool on that envelope. Here's another. Ooh, I like that. I like it. I like it. Ooh, that composition on that one. See, the composition is something you can really work on with the pressed plants and the pressed flowers, and that I really like how that came out. And that's the kind of thing you could do a drawing or a painting based off of that. I think that would give you some really good compositional ideas. This definitely is something I would want to just Mod Podge it onto this page and keep it on this page right here. Let's see what else we got here. I know I did some more fleshy. These are feeling pretty moist in here as well. These are some of the fleshier ones that I did. Oh wow, look at this. This is kind of making a mess. This is the Salvia purpurea. Ooh, a lot of these are wet. Look at, oh no, it's not making a mess. That's just the, there was some painting done on the back of that paper, which I think is distracting. So you can see how the background, having texture in the background could be distracting. I like this composition though. Very cool flower. The fuzziness shows through. Really cool plant for pressing. I'm gonna have to work with that one more in the future. I think this should stay in here for now. And then let's see what those, ooh, there's some more of the Salvia purpurea, and let's see what those leaves look like. They can't decide which side they're gonna stay stuck on, but wow, look, those are really, really architectural looking. I like that. And it looks cool on the isometric paper. I think they need more time in the press though, but look at how beautiful those are. I love how stark and architectural they look. This would be one to probably cut out with the paper. Some of these might be loose, but yeah, these need to go a little bit longer. They still feel moist. Let's see what else we got in here. So it's been about a week. Ooh, look at these ones. Yeah, cool. These are those, edible chrysanthemum leaves. Really pretty. And I can see there's a lot of moisture in this paper still. This is gonna go back in my car. That is for sure. Let's see how this gray paper did. it kind of makes a weird texture. I don't think I like that. So this is some gray drawing paper. I think it was Strathmore. Look at how that texture's all crazy. And it also is not, I don't think they look as good in front of gray. That they look better in front of white. More contrast. And then I've got, last but not least, there's some borage here. I want to take some of those out and use some of those. Ooh, cool. The leaves turn brown a lot, but the flowers maintain their color really nicely. So that's cool. I'm going to get one of these out of here. It looks like it's still a little bit wet, but I think I'll take the risk of working with that. And leave these ones in for another time. Maybe I'll take out one of these leaves to work with that. These still have moisture in the stem. Maybe I shouldn't use this borage. And no, that little one is dry enough, but this stem is holding a lot of moisture. I probably should have separated the flowers from that much stem. Okay, and that's it in this press right now. So I'm gonna close it back up. And I have to be careful because I don't have very much Mod Podge, so let's see how much can I bite off here. You know, I'm gonna try it as an experiment, storing some of these dried flowers in this envelope. Seeing what happens if I just store them in here, how safe will that keep them? And then I'm gonna use this one, but I'm not sure where yet. I'll save this for another page. That looks a little bit too, that looks kind of busy. How about, will this come off? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna try to put that down just like that, and I am going to paint it. I'm gonna put a little bit of Mod Podge on the back, glue it down, and then I'm going to Mod Podge over it to seal it. Actually, I think I'm just gonna use some of this glue to show you the fine applicator tip if it actually works. One tip, pro tip, is not to squeeze glue out over your like composition, but have a side area where you do that, because sometimes even the fine tip has a huge amount of glue suddenly gush out of it, and you don't want that coming down on your finished work. Okay, so there it comes out. That's the thing, that's another example of how this hasn't turned out to be as precision of a tool as I initially thought it was going to be. So now I'm just going to lay that down here. So that glue should hold it down. All right, great. While that's drying, I'm going to start getting my Mod Podge ready. And I'm going to work on this one, which I like so much. I think I'm gonna also
need to probably make a tool for applying glue underneath without lifting it up completely. So what I'm going to do is I have this relatively stiff paper right here, and I'm going to slide it underneath with some glue on it. Maybe we can use this glue that spilled earlier. And look for, I'm going to put some underneath the flower right there, that other flower right there. And let that go down. I still need to get further up on the leaves. I don't have enough glue ready. Oh, there we go. That's more than enough glue. So I've got a coating of glue on this piece of paper, and I'm just going to slide that underneath my plant here. All right, so I feel like that one's relatively secured. Maybe I'll get the tip a little bit more. Whoa, 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 that's way too much. Okay, now let's check on this one. It's mostly stuck by its own plant glues. Put a little couple dots here. Hopefully that one's stuck enough by its own plant glues. Okay, now while that one's drying, I'm gonna go back to this other one, which should be dry by now. And I'm going to turn this page here so I don't get anything accidentally glued onto there. Watch out for this, it has glue on it. Everything has glue on it. Okay, I should probably wait more on this glue before I do my Mod Podge over it, but this right here could probably take another coating at this point. And I think I'm going to thin it down a tad this time. I think my other brush was actually better than this, especially for delicate stuff. This is probably not the best. But hopefully this doesn't leave like a ton of texture from the sponge and these bubbles everywhere, but sometimes texture could be a good thing. All right, so I think that is enough Mod Podge to hold those jasmine flowers in and sort of protect them. And hopefully that texture won't stay, because I don't think I want that texture. If you are using pressed flowers in your nature journal, it's not essential to use Mod Podge. Actually, I think that I pressed this white sage plant and included it in my nature journal before I even knew what Mod Podge was, and I think it looks pretty good. I can't remember off the top of my head what type of adhesive I used. It might just be white Elmer's glue that I used to put it in there, and this is, like I said, on that last page. That inside cover, it's often empty in people's nature journals. It's a really fun place to do something decorative and experimental. Why not glue a pressed plant from your garden or a park near you inside that front cover or back cover? In conclusion, I think that flower pressing and nature journaling are two hobbies that go really well together. There's a lot that we can learn from doing flower pressing, and there's a lot of ways that we could hybridize those two practices. So I hope you learned something from that video. Give it a thumbs up and comment down below something that you know about pressing flowers, because I'm sure there's a lot of you that are experts, or something that you want to try next in your nature journaling. Thanks to all my Patreon patrons. You make the Nature Journal show possible. I wouldn't be able to do this without you. You can find out more about my Patreon by clicking this link up here. The people that support me for even $5 a month, it makes a big difference. How much do you think one of these shows costs to make? It's quite a bit of work to make a show like this. It's a multi-day process. So all of those people who are supporting with even $5 a month are making a really big difference. Plus they get access to special behind the scenes videos and content, as well as patron only parties. There's stickers, mugs, one-on-one coaching opportunities, and there's traveling journal kits. So definitely check out my Patreon page where you can sign up for as little as $5 a month and help make the Nature Journal show possible. If you didn't get enough and you can't wait until next week, check out one of these other videos on the Nature Journal show. Bye.